Eli crouched behind a jagged rock, scanning the barren horizon. The sun was low, its red-orange light stretching across the desert plains like molten metal. Dust whipped across his face, stinging his eyes, but he did not flinch. Survival on this planet was a test of endurance, patience, and careful planning, and Ellie had learned to master all three. His supplies were nearly gone. Only a few protein rations and a small canteen of water remained. Each step he took had to be measured. Each movement counted. One wrong choice, and he could end up as just another forgotten figure in the endless wasteland. He adjusted his pack and continued forward, searching for anything that might be useful. Pieces of old machinery, containers half buried in the sand, even scraps of metal could be traded or repurposed. Eli had been alone for weeks. His only company the constant wind and the occasional distant rumble of collapsing structures. He missed human contact, though he would never admit it. Loneliness was a luxury he could not afford. Focus mattered more than company, but sometimes, in the quiet hours before the sun disappeared completely, the ache for connection gnawed at him. A shadow flickered in the corner of his vision. Eli froze, gripping his makeshift staff tighter. He squinted through the haze of dust and heat. There, moving carefully across the rocks, was a figure. Not large, but unmistakably human. She moved with caution, scanning the ground as if she expected danger at every step. Something in the way she moved made Eli pause. He had learned to read the body language of survivors, and this one looked exhausted, wary, but not entirely helpless. He stepped out slowly, hands visible, to show he meant no harm.
"Hey!" he called, his voice carrying over the wind.
"Do you need help?" The figure froze. Then, after a pause, she nodded slightly. Her clothes were worn, patched in multiple places, and she carried a small pack that seemed to hold almost nothing. Her hair was tangled and her face bore the streaks of dust and sweat. Eli could see the faintest trace of a scar along her cheek, evidence of some past injury. He recognized it instantly. Survivors often carried their stories written into their skin. Eli moved closer, cautious but deliberate. "I don't have much," he said, "but I can share what I have." He lifted his pack slightly to show the remaining rations. "Water, food. It's not much, but it will keep you alive for a day or two." She hesitated, her eyes flicking between him and the horizon. For a moment, Eli wondered if she would flee, vanish into the desert like a ghost, but then she stepped forward and nodded again. Relief washed over him. The loneliness had been harsh, but it was also a reminder of the importance of connection. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was soft but firm. She did not ask questions, did not offer anything in return, just accepted the help. Eli handed her the rations carefully. She took them with both hands, her fingers brushing his for a brief moment, and he felt a strange warmth despite the cold, dry air. "Do you have a place to stay?" Eli asked, trying to sound casual. "A shelter, a tent, something?" "No," she admitted. Her eyes darted to the rocks behind them, and she gestured vaguely toward a small cluster of formations.
"Just over there, but it's barely a shelter."
Not safe for long. They formed a small natural alcove, enough to shield from wind and dust, but not much more. Still, it was better than nothing. "I can come with you," he offered. "It's safer together than alone." She glanced at him, as if weighing the risk. Then, without a word, she nodded and began walking toward the alcove. Eli followed, careful not to step too close, giving her space while still keeping an eye on the surroundings. The desert was dangerous, and predators, both mechanical and natural, could appear at any moment. When they reached the alcove, she pulled a few sheets of fabric from her pack and arranged them over the rocks. It was rudimentary, but it would block the worst of the wind. Eli knelt beside her and added a few extra pieces from his own pack, reinforcing the walls and creating a small corner where they could sit without being buried in dust. The simple act of working together felt oddly comforting. In a place where trust was rare, it was a rare connection. Once the shelter was ready, she gestured for Eli to sit. He lowered himself onto the sand, careful not to make it obvious that he was exhausted. The heat from the sun had drained him, and the long journey had taken its toll. She handed him a small portion of water, and he drank gratefully. Then she sat opposite him, her posture relaxed but alert. "I'm Kayla," she said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a faint accent, unfamiliar but not unpleasant.
"I've been alone for a long time."
"It's nice to see someone who doesn't just want to take what I have." Ellie nodded. "I know what it's like," he said quietly. "To survive, you have to make choices. Sometimes you have to share, even when it hurts. But it's worth it." "People are worth it." Kayla studied him for a moment. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Curiosity, caution, maybe hope. She shifted slightly and gestured toward her pack. "I don't have much, but I can tell you things about the planet, about the ruins. There's knowledge buried here if you know where to look." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "Knowledge? That sounds interesting. Dangerous, too."
Kayla smiled faintly. "Danger is everywhere," she said.
"Better to have someone with you than to face it alone." They spent the next hour in silence, sharing what little they had. Eli told her about his journey from the northern settlements, about the collapse of supply lines and the scattered communities struggling to survive. Kayla shared fragments of her own story, sketches of old maps, descriptions of abandoned research stations, hints of technology that had once promised to change the planet. Eli listened carefully, realizing that she knew more than most people about this world, its secrets, and its hidden dangers. As night began to fall, the temperature dropped sharply. The desert, scorching during the day, became a harsh freezing wasteland at night. Eli pulled a thermal blanket from his pack and draped it over both of them. They huddled close for warmth, and Kayla did not protest. In the silence, a bond began to form. Not yet friendship, but recognition of shared struggle. The first stars appeared in the sky, pale and distant. Eli looked up, feeling the vastness of space pressing down on him. He had survived harsh worlds before, but this place was different. The emptiness was oppressive, and yet, in the presence of Kayla, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe survival was not just about rationing supplies or avoiding danger. Maybe it was also about finding someone to trust, someone to share the burden with. Kayla broke the silence. "I've seen people take everything from me," she said quietly. "Supplies, shelter, trust, even hope. But you didn't. You shared." Her eyes glimmered in the starlight, reflecting a mixture of gratitude and something Eli couldn't quite name. He nodded, unsure what to say. Words felt inadequate. Instead, he offered her a small smile, the kind that carried reassurance without needing explanation. For a moment, the wind outside seemed to soften, the harshness of the desert less oppressive. Eli realized then that survival was not just about being strong or clever. It was about connection, compassion, and the courage to extend a hand when it was easier to turn away. Kayla's presence reminded him of that simple truth, and he felt a flicker of optimism he hadn't known in weeks. They settled into a quiet rhythm, listening to the wind howl outside, the occasional distant rumble of shifting sands, and the subtle sounds of the desert night. Sleep was fitful, but necessary. In a world so harsh, rest was a treasure. And as Eli closed his eyes, he felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, he was not completely alone. In the darkness of the wasteland, two survivors had found each other. Not by accident, but by choice. And in that choice, Eli felt the first glimmer of a truth he had always believed but had almost forgotten. Humanity, even in the harshest conditions, endured not through might alone, but through trust, empathy, and the courage to reach out to one another. The first rays of dawn broke over the desert, painting the horizon with shades of gold and pale orange. The wind had calmed, leaving the sand smooth and quiet. As if the planet itself were holding its breath, Eli stirred, brushing grit from his face, and glanced at Kayla. She was already awake, sitting near the small fire he had managed to spark from some dry twigs and scrap material. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, distant and thoughtful, as though she could see memories stretching beyond the present moment. Eli moved closer, careful not to startle her. "Morning," he said softly, breaking the silence. "Did you sleep well?" Kayla glanced at him and offered a small nod. "Enough," she replied. "The desert is not forgiving, but it does not attack while you sleep. At least, not always." Her voice carried a calm authority, like someone who had spent many nights fighting exhaustion and fear, yet had learned to survive anyway. Eli knelt beside the fire and poured himself a small sip of water. "We should start moving soon," he said. "There's nothing to stay for here except rocks and wind. We need supplies, shelter, maybe a better vantage point, somewhere we can see more than just sand." Kayla nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "I know a place," she said. "Not far. It's safer, for a time at least. There's an old outpost from before the collapse. Most of it is ruined, but some of the storage units survived. I can guide you there if you want." Eli studied her, sensing both the offer and the caution behind it. "And why would you help me?" he asked. "You could survive alone. It's not easy, but you could manage." Kayla's gaze softened. "Because survival is not just about avoiding danger," she said. "It's about learning from it, about sharing what you know. And because I have nobody else. You're the first person I've met in months who didn't try to take from me. I think I owe you that." Eli nodded, understanding without words. They packed their few belongings, each movement precise and quiet. The desert greeted them with a faint chill in the early morning air, and the sun climbed slowly, its heat warning them of the harsh hours ahead. As they walked, Kayla began to speak more about herself. "I was part of a research colony," she said, her eyes flicking to the horizon, as if she could see the memories unfold. "Not just any colony. We were studying alien artifacts, machines left behind long before humans arrived on this planet. They could have changed everything, reshaped the land, even altered the climate. We thought we could control it. We thought we were smart enough."
Ellie listened silently, intrigued. "What happened?" he asked gently.
He could hear the weight in her voice, the pain behind her calm words. Kayla's lips pressed into a thin line. "A mistake," she admitted. "A single experiment went wrong. Machines we didn't understand began to fail, and some of my friends didn't survive. The colony fractured. Most of the settlements were abandoned. I was left alone, trying to survive in a wasteland I didn't recognize anymore. The desert stretched endlessly around them, and for a moment, silence filled the space between the words." Eli felt the enormity of her story, and he realized how lucky he had been to encounter her. Not many survived in this world without allies, without careful planning, without luck. And here was someone who had endured far more than he had ever imagined. "Why did you keep going?" he asked quietly. "Why survive when everything seems lost?" Kayla's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "Because survival is the first step," she said. "The second step is learning. And the third is using what you know to rebuild. I cannot bring back the past, but I can make sure the future does not repeat the same mistakes." They moved carefully, navigating the rocky terrain that hid dangerous drops and unstable ground. Eli followed her lead, noting how well she understood the land, how her every step was measured to avoid danger. It was clear she had spent years in this harsh environment, learning its rhythms, its secrets, and its hidden dangers. After hours of walking, the ruins of the old outpost came into view. Once a hub of activity, it now lay half buried in sand, its walls fractured and scorched by years of neglect and environmental damage. Broken machinery jutted out from collapsed structures, and rusted metal crunched beneath their feet. Yet despite the decay, the outpost had survived the worst of the desert storms. Kayla led Eli carefully through a narrow entrance where the wind had blown the sand into a small dune, providing a natural shield from the open plains. "Here," she said softly. "This place is not perfect, but it's better than anything else nearby. Storage units survived and some equipment is still functional. We can rest and maybe find supplies to last another week or more." Inside the outpost, the air was cooler, heavy with dust, and the faint metallic scent of decaying machines. Sunlight streamed through holes in the roof, creating patterns of light on the floor. Eli moved carefully, scanning the area for danger. Nothing moved, no signs of life. It was quiet, almost peaceful. A stark contrast to the harsh desert outside. Kayla directed him to a storage area where crates were stacked neatly, though coated in dust. She opened one, revealing preserved food packets, water containers, and basic tools. Eli's eyes widened. This is incredible, he said, marveling at the small treasure trove. "Where did you find this?" Kayla smiled faintly. "I knew it was here," she said. "From old maps, memories of the colony. I've been coming here for months." Carefully, avoiding patrols and dangerous terrain. "Not everything survived, but enough for us to rest, to plan." Eli helped her organize the supplies, stacking water, food, and equipment so they could access it easily. As they worked, Kayla spoke more about her past. She described her friends, engineers, scientists, explorers, people who had dreamed of understanding the alien technology. She told stories of late-night experiments, of discoveries that could have reshaped humanity's future. Of the day everything fell apart. Her voice carried both sorrow and pride, a testament to her resilience. Eli listened, impressed by her knowledge and determination. "You've survived so much," he said finally, "alone against everything. It's remarkable." Kayla shrugged, a faint smile crossing her face. "I had to survive," she said. "But it's easier with someone else." "I'm glad you're here. Not just for supplies, but for company. It's been a long time since I trusted anyone." The day passed slowly, the sun climbing high and then dipping toward the horizon. They explored more of the outpost, finding usable equipment and making minor repairs. Kayla taught Eli how to identify functioning machinery, how to repurpose broken tools, and how to navigate the tricky paths outside the outpost without attracting attention. Eli found himself learning not just survival techniques, but also a deeper understanding of the planet itself. The way the wind shifted, the patterns of sandstorms, and the hidden dangers that lurked beneath the surface. By evening, they had created a small safe zone inside the outpost. A fire burned steadily in a corner, using salvaged fuel, and the remaining rations were carefully rationed. The outpost, though ruined, had become a temporary home, a haven against the harsh desert outside. As night fell, Kayla sat across from Eli, her expression thoughtful. "There's more to show you," she said quietly. "Things that could change how we survive here, and maybe even how we restore parts of this world. But you need to understand my past first. You need to trust me." Eli looked at her, seeing both the weight of her words and the earnestness in her eyes. He nodded. "I trust you," he said simply. "Not blindly, but enough to follow." Kayla's lips curved into a small smile. "Good," she said. "Tomorrow I will show you something the colony left behind. It's hidden, but intact, and if we are careful it can help us both survive. and maybe more than that. The night deepened around the outpost, the stars brighter here than anywhere Eli had ever seen. The desert was silent, save for the distant howl of the wind and the occasional shift of sand. Inside the ruins, 2 survivors shared the quiet warmth of a fire, each lost in their thoughts yet connected by circumstance and choice. Eli realized that meeting Kayla had changed more than just his immediate chances of survival. It had reminded him that even in a world broken by mistakes and neglect, humanity had a way of enduring, not through machines or technology alone, but through knowledge, resilience, and the willingness to share what little one had with another. Kayla's past was painful, filled with loss and regret, but it was also a testament to perseverance. And as Eli watched the stars flicker above, he understood that their journey together was just beginning. They had found safety for now, but the wasteland held many secrets and many dangers. And yet, for the first time in a long time, hope seemed possible. The desert morning came slowly, the sun casting pale light across the jagged horizon. Eli and Kayla had spent the night inside the ruined outpost, their fire reduced to glowing embers, but both felt a strange sense of readiness. A quiet anticipation that today would bring change. Kayla's eyes were already bright and alert, scanning the ruined structures with an intensity that made Eli feel he was walking into something bigger than himself. "Are you ready?" Kayla asked quietly. She stood near the entrance, her pack slung lightly over one shoulder, a small toolkit in hand. Eli nodded. "As ready as I can be." "Lead the way." Kayla smiled faintly.
"Good. I'll show you something the colony left behind."
"It's hidden, but it's still intact. We need to be careful. There's danger out there, even if the wasteland seems empty." They stepped outside, the sun climbing higher, its heat pressing down on them immediately. The wind had calmed from yesterday, leaving the sand firm underfoot. They moved cautiously through the rocks, Kayla leading the way. She pointed out areas where sand had hidden pitfalls, broken machinery, and weak surfaces. Eli followed closely, noting her precision and careful movements. Survival, he realized, was as much about observation as strength. After hours of careful travel, they arrived at a cluster of ruins half buried in sand. Eli recognized the structures as remnants of the colony's research facilities, once pristine and organized, now crumbling but strangely intact in places. Kayla led him to a narrow passage hidden behind a collapsed wall. "Here," she whispered. "This leads to what I call the archive. The colony stored its most important data and tools here. It's still functional, but not everything is safe to touch." Eli's curiosity was piqued. He followed her through the passage, stepping carefully over debris. The narrow corridor opened into a large chamber, surprisingly preserved. Dust hung in the air, catching the sunlight that filtered through cracks in the ceiling. Walls lined with shelves held small containers, each labeled in a script Eli had never seen before. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with a device resting on top. "This," Kayla said, her voice reverent, "is what I wanted to show you. The colony's last attempt at restoring part of the planet. It's not fully operational, but it can help us, if we understand it." Ellie approached cautiously. The device was small but complex, covered in buttons, screens, and unknown symbols. It hummed faintly, a sign that some power still flowed through it. "How do you know it's safe?" he asked. Kayla shrugged. "I don't. That's why we'll be careful. But I've studied it for months. I know what each part does, or at least enough to activate the basic systems." She gestured for him to stand back while she knelt, examining the device closely. Hours passed as they worked together, Eli watching Kayla manipulate the device with precision and care. She explained the functions, teaching him which controls were safe and which could cause malfunctions. Slowly, the device responded, lights flickering and a soft hum growing louder. A holographic map projected above the pedestal, displaying the surrounding desert in detail, marking hidden water sources, old shelters, and other points of interest. "This is incredible," Eli said, awe in his voice. "We can plan routes, find resources, even avoid dangers." "Mine." Kaela nodded, a faint smile on her face. "Exactly. And this is just the beginning. The colony left more behind, hidden in small caches across the desert. If we can find them, we can not only survive, but thrive. Maybe even rebuild some of what was lost." Their excitement was interrupted by a sudden vibration beneath their feet. Eli froze, listening carefully. The sound came again, a low mechanical thrum, rhythmic and deliberate. He turned to Kayla. "What is that?" Kyla's expression tightened. "Scavengers," she said quietly. "Machines designed to hunt and collect anything living or valuable. They patrol the wasteland, especially near old colonies. We need to move, now." Eli followed her through the narrow passage, carrying what supplies and data they could manage. Outside, the desert had shifted. The sand was smooth in some areas, disturbed in others, indicating the machine's recent passage. Kayla led him toward a cluster of rocks that would provide cover, their movements deliberate and careful. They crouched behind a large boulder, watching as the scavengers approached. The machines were sleek, angular, and silent, except for the faint whir of their sensors. They scanned the terrain, their glowing eyes sweeping over the sand, searching for anything alive. Eli held his breath, heart pounding, and followed Kayla's instructions to remain still. "Don't make a sound," she whispered. "They can detect movement and heat signatures. If we stay low, we can slip past them." Eli nodded, gripping his staff tightly. They waited as the scavengers passed, their metallic legs clanking softly against the ground. The machines moved with precision, efficient and unfeeling, collecting scrap and scanning for life. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavy with tension. Finally, the machines moved beyond the ridge. Kayla exhaled softly, glancing at Eli. "We're clear for now," she said, "but we need to be smarter."
They will return, and there are more than a few in the area. We can't rely on luck alone.
Eli nodded, a new respect for her growing. Her knowledge of the land and its dangers was unparalleled. "What do we do next?" he asked. Kayla studied the horizon, her eyes sharp. "We move to another cache," she said. "It's hidden in the cliffs to the east. Supplies, tools, and more data. But the path is tricky, steep, and unstable. We'll need to use everything we've learned." The journey was exhausting. The cliffs were sharp, jagged, and covered in loose stones. Eli struggled at first, unsure of the best path, but Kayla guided him, showing handholds, safe steps, and hidden ledges. Her confidence and precision made him trust her completely, and together they navigated the treacherous terrain. Hours later, they reached a small plateau. There, partially buried in sand and rocks, was another cache, a small metallic box, surprisingly intact. Kayla opened it carefully, revealing tools, water, and a device similar to the one in the archive, though smaller. It hummed faintly, a sign that power remained. "This will help us survive longer," Kayla said, examining the device. "And it can extend our understanding of the planet. But we need to test it, carefully. One mistake could alert the scavengers, or worse, damage the system."
Eli assisted her, following her instructions precisely.
They connected the device to a small solar panel, testing its systems. Lights flickered and the device began to analyze the surrounding environment, scanning for hidden water sources, potential shelter, and even safe paths for travel. It was more than a tool. It was a glimpse of what the colony had once envisioned, a network of knowledge and survival spread across the harsh desert. As they worked, Kayla's expression softened. "I've been alone for too long," she admitted quietly. "To share this knowledge, to trust someone. But you've earned it." And I think, together, we can make a difference. Eli smiled faintly. I agree, he said. We can survive, and maybe even thrive. But we have to stay alert. The scavengers won't forget us, and there are other dangers we haven't seen yet. Just as he finished speaking, a faint metallic whine echoed from the cliffs behind them. Eli tensed, and Kayla's eyes narrowed. They're back, she said softly. More than before. We need to move, now. They packed up quickly, taking only what was essential. The scavengers moved closer, their glowing eyes sweeping the plateau. Eli and Kayla slipped down a narrow path, carefully avoiding loose stones and unstable ground. Their movements were silent, practiced, almost instinctive. The desert, once passive, now felt alive with danger. Hours passed in tense silence, the scavengers scanning tirelessly. Eli marveled at Kayla's skill, how she navigated the terrain with a mix of caution and confidence. Every step, every decision mattered. They finally reached a hidden ravine, a natural shelter where the scavengers could not follow. Kayla set up a small fire, careful to keep it low and smoke-free. They rested briefly, their bodies exhausted but their minds alert. We survived, Eli said quietly, breaking the silence. Kayla smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. For now, she said. But survival is not enough. We need to learn, prepare, and use what the colony left behind. If we do, we can change this wasteland, even if just a little. Eli nodded, feeling a mix of awe and determination. Kayla's courage, ingenuity, and knowledge had kept them alive through nearly impossible odds. And he realized that together, they were stronger than either could be alone. The night deepened around them, the desert quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire. Eli watched Kayla, thinking about her past, her losses, and her determination. He understood that the journey ahead would be filled with danger, but also with discovery, hope, and the rare chance to make a real difference. And in that moment he knew that humanity, its ingenuity, its resilience, and its courage, was not defined by survival alone. It was defined by the choices people made, the trust they extended, and the willingness to face impossible odds together. The desert was quiet, almost eerily so, as Eli and Kayla emerged from the hidden ravine. The scavenger machines had retreated after hours of searching, leaving the wasteland still but tense. The sun hung low, its golden light casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. Today they would reach the colony's final cache, the last piece of the puzzle Kayla had been searching for. If they succeeded, they could change the harsh landscape around them and perhaps find a way to restore life to this forsaken world. Kayla led the way, her steps sure and precise. Eli followed closely, carrying the small devices and tools they had gathered. Each step was careful. The desert had taught them both that a single misstep could be fatal. Despite the danger, there was a sense of excitement, a spark of hope neither had felt in weeks. The final cache is hidden inside an old observation tower, Kayla said, her voice low but steady. It's reinforced, built to survive storms, and it contains the colony's most important equipment. If we can activate it, we can use it to help the planet, even in small ways. Ellie glanced at her. And the scavengers? Kayla's expression hardened. We have to be smart. They patrol constantly. If we're careful, we can reach the tower without being detected. But we must move fast and work together. The journey to the tower was arduous. The desert terrain was unforgiving. Steep inclines, jagged rocks, and shifting sand. Eli struggled at first, his muscles aching from the constant strain, but Kayla's steady guidance kept him moving. She pointed out hidden footholds, marked safe paths, and even improvised tools to help them climb over obstacles. Each moment required focus, and each step was a reminder of the stakes. As they neared the tower, the first signs of danger appeared. Tracks in the sand indicated scavengers had passed this way recently. The machines were active, relentless, and likely searching for survivors. Eli's heart raced. He knew that one wrong move could alert them. Kayla motioned for him to stay low, and they crawled behind a natural ridge, their bodies pressed against the rocks. "They're near," Kayla whispered. "We'll wait for the patrol to pass. When it does, we make a dash for the tower." Minutes stretched into tense silence. The distant hum of scavenger engines grew louder, then faded as the machines passed. Kayla counted in her mind, then gave a subtle nod. Eli understood. It was time. They sprinted toward the tower, using the rocks and natural cover to shield themselves. The climb was steep, but Kayla had studied the structure. She pointed to stable ledges and handholds, guiding Eli as they ascended. Every movement required precision. Eli could feel the strain in his arms and legs, but he focused on Kayla's instructions, trusting her knowledge completely. Finally, they reached the entrance at the top of the tower. It was a metal hatch, partially buried in sand, but surprisingly intact. Kayla pried it open with a tool from her pack, revealing a spiral staircase leading down into a small chamber. The air was cooler here, and faint mechanical hums suggested the systems inside still functioned. "This is it," Kayla said, her voice filled with awe. "The heart of the colony's last efforts. If we can activate the equipment, we can start restoring parts of this planet." Eli followed her down the stairs, eyes wide at the technology surrounding them. Consoles lined the walls, some flickering with faint light, others dark but clearly intact. In the center of the room stood a large device, its panels marked with the same symbols as the previous tools they had found. It pulsed faintly as if waiting for them to breathe life into it. Kayla moved to the control panel, connecting the smaller devices they had recovered. Lights flickered, screens activated, and a soft hum filled the chamber. Eli watched as the device analyzed the surrounding environment, displaying maps, data points, and potential areas for restoration. Water sources, hidden soil pockets, and old energy nodes appeared on the screens, tools the colony had left behind to help human survivors thrive. "This is incredible," Eli said. "With this, we can survive, and more than that, we can start changing the planet." Kayla nodded, her fingers moving over the controls with practiced precision. "It won't be easy," she admitted. "The systems are old, and we have limited energy. But we can start small, restore water, create shelters, plant hardy vegetation. Step by step, we can bring life back." As they worked, the hum of machinery outside alerted them to a familiar sound. The scavenger machines. Eli froze, glancing at Kayla. Her eyes narrowed, and she quickly devised a plan. "They'll come for the tower," she whispered. "But we can use the defenses the colony built. Follow my lead." She directed Eli to pull levers and activate mechanisms along the walls. Panels slid open, revealing small defensive devices, harmless but effective distractions for the scavengers. Lights flashed, sounds echoed, and the machines outside paused, scanning for the source. The ruse worked. The scavengers, confused by the sudden activity, moved away from the tower, giving Eli and Kayla precious time to work. Eli marveled at her ingenuity. She combined her knowledge of the land with the colony's technology to outsmart the machines without harming them. It was a perfect example of human resourcefulness. Cleverness, observation, and strategy overcoming brute force. With the immediate threat distracted, Kayla focused on activating the main system. Screens flickered, circuits hummed, and finally, a larger holographic map projected into the chamber, displaying the entire region. Water sources, underground reserves, and potential shelter zones were highlighted. It was as if the desert itself had become readable, revealing secrets hidden for decades. Eli stepped closer, awe in his eyes. This is more than survival. This is hope. Kayla's gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of her past seemed to lift. "It's more than hope," she said quietly. "It's proof that even after failure, even after loss, humans can make a difference. We can endure, adapt, and rebuild. They spent the next hours working together, marking safe paths, identifying water reserves, and setting up temporary shelters. Every decision was deliberate, every action careful. The wasteland outside was still dangerous, but inside the tower, a new vision took shape, one of possibility, growth, and perseverance. As night fell, the desert glowed under a canopy of stars. Eli and Kayla stood on the balcony of the tower, looking out over the dunes and rock formations. The desert, once harsh and lifeless, now held promise. Small indicators of water, pockets of fertile soil, and hidden shelter zones were revealed by the colony's technology. Kayla smiled faintly. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We have what we need to survive, but also to make a difference. The planet isn't lost, not while humans are willing to work, to think, to endure." Eli looked at her, admiration clear in his eyes. "We couldn't have done this alone," he said. "Together, we're stronger. We can face anything this wasteland throws at us." Kayla nodded. "Exactly. Humanity survives not through machines or tools or luck alone. It survives through connection, ingenuity, and courage, and we have all three." For the first time in weeks, Eli felt truly at peace. The journey had been dangerous, exhausting, and uncertain, but it had also revealed something powerful. Humans could endure. They could adapt, and even in a broken, barren world, they could create hope. The scavenger machines had returned to the horizon, but the tower's defenses, combined with their clever planning, kept them safe. Eli and Kayla rested, watching the stars flicker above, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of the future. The wasteland was still harsh, still unforgiving, but now it was a place of potential, a canvas where human resilience could write a new story. Kayla looked at Eli, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and determination. "Tomorrow, we continue," she said softly. "We expand our reach, restore what we can, and help others who survive out here. The colony's work doesn't have to be forgotten. We can continue it, one step at a time." Eli smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. "And we will," he said. "Together." The wind whispered through the desert, carrying the faint scent of hope and possibility. In the darkness, two survivors had found not only safety but purpose. And as they looked toward the horizon, they knew that humanity's story, its ingenuity, resilience, and courage, would continue no matter how harsh the world became. The wasteland was no longer a prison. It was a challenge, and one they were ready to face. With knowledge, determination, and trust, Eli and Kayla stood on the edge of a new beginning, ready to turn the harsh desert into a place where humans could endure and thrive. And in that moment, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging the persistence of those who refused to give up.